This is Dr. Vara Lakshmi, and I'm going to be discussing you other brief about the Module 4 of Business Economics and Financial Analysis. This before a fourth module is about the capital and its significance. So here, capital. First, and there's business economics, a demandable product is identified by the producer. According to the identified demand, they will produce the product. They'll take care of the productional elements, that is fetching of what raw material they require and labor they require, all the lands, everything they will set for that one. Even if they want to establish that production unit, they requires the money, they requires the goods, they requires the raw materials, they requires the they requires the human capital, and they requires the machineries, they requires the land, they requires some technological elements, etc., etc. All these things, they are all going to be starting to meet to meet their objectivity or the goal of selling this particular product in an identified markets, whether it is solo proprietorship, partnership, or a business, any kind of the business entity it is. It requires the capital or the money, or any of these inputs are all required. So that inputs which can be measured in terms of the monetary item are called as the capital. Again, I'm repeating. So we can say if a person is there, a person can start the business by having his computer and his intellectual properties. Then we can say that the capital is the amount which he has spent for that particular laptop or the any computer, and his intellectual properties, whatever that is a qualitative element only, but we can't convert into the money item. Only the computer will be comes under this capital. Or if he has used any of the room, then it is called as the computer. Any of that room, then that room rent which they have paid is called as the capital. Or the intellectual properties, his own known things to the others, these all will not be called as the capital. So, and the next thing is the vehicles, or if again amount if they have spent for that one, or by the time of the starting that business, the vehicles cost if they are estimating, then that will be called as the capital. Let us say a person has started with his own truck. By the purchasing of that particular truck, he has not established any businesses. The truck cost was 10 lakh rupees. But after 5 years of the usage, he wants to start a particular business. So previously, he was only a transportation or the carrying the goods and services. After 5 years, now he is estimating that truck cost of the market cost is only the 6 lakhs rupees. At this time, he is going to be start a business by including this particular truck. At this time, if he has entered the book value of that truck is 6 lakhs, then this one only will be called as the capital. Other thing will not be treated as the capital. That is, but though he has spent 10 lakhs, he has used that one. But by the time of the business establishment, that truck cost is 6 lakhs, then it is called as the capital. So that means to initiate any business organization or the business entities, that like how the types of the business entities were discussed in this module 3. For that business entities, the amount spending by them or the any items which can be convertible into monetary items is called as the capital. So this capital structure is based on the business risk as well as the financial risk. They may invest this 50%, 50-50, 60-40, 40-60, 65-35, or any of this proportionate they can invest either in the form of the that is 50% of the equity and the 50% of the debt, or 60-40 or 100%. Any of this combination of the equity and debt capital is called as the capital structure. Okay, we have that one. Equity means as a ownership, If that person is ready to take the risk of that business as well as this financial risk, then it is called as this ownership risk. If the person is ready to take the business risk only but not the financial risk, then it is called as the debt capital. So, based on the risk taking, the capital is divided into two elements. One is the equity capital, another one is the financial capital. If a person is there and he is going to be acting as a owner, if he is doing the business, if he get the losses, he has to bear that losses, but the interest amount they have to payable to the banks irrespective of the business or financial risks and all, they have to pay the interest to the banks. But if finally the business risk occurs, they are all selling with the losses, then at that time only banks will be bears that one. So that's why the capital furtherly combines or divides as the equity capital as well as the debt capital. And this combination of the equity and debt capital is called as the capital structure. That means the equity capital is in the form of ownership capital or the shareholders funds. Then the amount which is borrowed by the organization is called as the borrowed or debt capital. So let us see, we'll better understanding with an example of this one. Let us say, assume that an organization requires 100 crores of the capital. An organization requires 100 crores capital, and if they wants to invest as a solo proprietorship, 100 crores responsibility is by one person only. If they wants to start as a partnership company, this 100 crores will be belongs to this number of the limited partners which they have gathered together. And even if it is also society, the society people only will invest that particular capital. But especially this capital plays a vital role for the limited liability companies, that is public limited, private limited or the joint stock company ones. They will make more concentrate about the capital and the capital terminology. It doesn't mean that others does not require, but capital and the capital structure more concerned are main element in this limited liability companies. Okay, if it is a company that 100 crores means limited liability companies, compulsory LTDs we will call them, that is compulsory, they have to divide this particular capital into equal parts. That equally divided unit of that particular capital is called as the share. A subunit of equally divided capital is called as the share. Assume that 100 crores, each unit is divided into 10 rupees. Then the number of the shares are all 10 crores. If each unit is divided into 100 rupees, then the number of the shares will be 100 crores. So which means if 10 crore number of the people or 10 crore number of the tickets is 10 crore number of the shares, each share value 10 rupees means how much of capital they can accumulate? 100 crores number of shares. And if each person is going to be accumulating 100 rupees, if 1 crore such shares are all there, then they are going to accumulate 100 crores. Okay, so this 100 crores is the amount which is estimated for the smooth functioning of a business as per their plannings and the business ideas. Then it is called as the initial capital. After that one, if they wants to add some more capital, then that will be called as the additional capital. So this is the initial capital at the beginning of the business, whatever they are estimating and they are going to be investing, then that is called as the 100 crores. Once they have established, if they require 10 more crores for the further expansion of the business activities and all, then that 10 crores if they have adds, then it is called as the additional capital. The types of the capital I am discussing first of all. So first, initially it is an initial capital, and at the time of the end of this one, then it is called as the at the end of the time period, then it is called as the additional not that end one, it is called as the additional capital. or at the time of the wind up also, that means end time period, or also we can say it as wind up capital. At the end of that particular organization, the capital remaining with the organization is called as the wind up capital. So this is the capital which is initially they have invested is called as initial capital. The second is called as the second element is called as the additional capital, and the third one is called as the wind up capital. And the next one, this capital after usaging or while acquiring, so based on the insertion, they were all categorized into these three segments. Based on the inception, they were all categorized as equity capital or debt capital. Let us say in this one, 60 crores is invested by the owners and equivalent of the owners. That is, owner has 10 crores and equals to this owners. They are ready to take the business risk as well as the financial risk. The 50 crores is again invested by the other person, then it is called as the equity capital. And the remaining 40 crores, that much of owners has not required, not came, and they went for the banks to take the debt. So banks or the private financials, they have invested only as in the form of the debt. They are not ready to take any of the risks which are occurring by the organizations. Then it is called as the debt capital. So here again, based on the investments and the risk taking, the capital is again categorized into equity capital as well as the debt capital. This equity capital as well as this debt capital is based on the inception it is. Then based on the usage, it is categorized into the two elements again. If they are all using for the acquiring of long-term assets, then that capital will be called as the fixed capital. If they are using for the short-term, then it is called as the working capital. Day-to-day activities, if they are all spending, then it is called as the working capital. So this is the types of the capital which are using by the organizations. That is, capital means every rupee which is spending for the business organizations, that is the capital. And based on the time period at the beginning of the business entities, then it is called as the initial capital. And at the time of the expansion, it is called as the additional capital. At the time of the wind ups, it is called as the wind up capital. And based on the type of the business risk bearing, it is categorized as they are ready to take the risk for the both business as well as the financial risk, then that is called as the equity risk. If they are ready to take only the financial risk than the business risk, then it is called as the debt capital. Then based on the spending of that capital, if they spend for the long-term activities, then it is called as a fixed capital. If they are ready to spend for the current or the day-to-day activities, then it is called as the working capital. Then, so as per our example, so we have seen that one, if the shares are all divided as based on the market demand. If there is more demand for the products, then there will be a more demand, there will be a high prices will be for each share value. So for example, Reliance like companies can fix the 1,000 rupees also the people are ready to invest for each share. But if it is an XYZ company or an unknown company, even if they keep their share value as 1 rupee, a very few members are ready to take this number of shares. That means the shares or the number of price of that shares are based on their market condition. Again, here the demand factors will be taken into the consideration. Based on the demand only, they'll fix a share value. So now, here the share value is of 10 rupees, 100 rupees, that is again demand. Assume that if the share value is 10 rupees means the number of shares will become 100 crores. Now this 100 crores means, so each share value is 10 rupees. So that subunit of the equally divided, so they are equally divided, that one. So that subunit of equally divided capital is called as the share. And this shares, out of this 10 crore number of shares, if 6 crore number of shares were in the form of equity capital, remaining 4 crore number of shares might be in the form of debt capital. So which means, again, among this 6 crores, 4 crores, just it is an assumption only, that is whatever the proportion it is, assume that 4 crore number of shares, numbers here it is, are all numbers, which means we have to make this 4 crores into 10 rupees. Here we have to make sure this 10 rupees into 6 crores. 4 crores into 4 crore number of shares into 10 rupees. So debt capital. 4 crore number of shares again is in the form of the equity shares, where again the 2 crore number of shares is in the form of preference shares. And again the 4 crore number of the shares are in the form of the debt. So here again that 3 crores might be in the form of debentures, debenture shares, and 1 crore number of shares might be in the form of debt capital. So which means they have based on the categories. Okay, equity shares means what? Means that we have seen that the share value is 10 rupees, and this 10 rupees worth of the investments, every person, even if this person equity share or the preference share, whatever the share it is, this 10 rupees is the face value of the share. If the face value only they sell that particular share, then it is called as the par value. If they are selling with this more than the face value, then we can say that the shares with a premium value. If they are selling with this discount or the less than the face value, then we can say that the shares were sold with the discount value. If they are selling with this, they may sell that particular share with the par value, premium value, or discount value. So here, if that same face value they are all selling means par value they can sell. That is 100 rupees. If the 10 rupees the share is there, the same 10 rupees they can sell. If there is more demand, they can sell it for the 12 rupees or 13 rupees. But the share value is 10 rupees or only, consider all the capital will be treated as the 10 rupees or only. The 2 rupees will be the premium for the organization that can be kept by the organization for further any losses and all, they'll take the decisions. There is no demand at all for the organization. They maybe sell that particular shares for 8 rupees or only. But that 2 rupees the organization has to bear. So that means the organization has the categorizations for the selling of the shares. Some shares they can sell it with a par value, sometimes they may sell it with a premium value, sometimes or some shares they can sell it with a discount value. Then whatever it is, they will sell the shares, but the face value only takes into the consideration. Even if they have sold with the premium or the discount, they will take only the par value into the consideration. That is an element we have to understand. Now, assume that for this 100 crores, initially they have initiated the business and they have run the business successfully. After 1 year, now the share value of that particular business has become, market value of that company has become 1 or 2 crores. So now after 1 year, net worth of the company is 1 or 2 crores. This is the first case, and the company share value might become 98 crores. This is the second case. So here Net worth then means that as per the time period, the total number of the capitals which are added or subtracted combinedly are called as the net worth of the organization. If it become 1 or 2 crores, there is a profit of 2 crores. And if it become 98 crores, it is a case of minus 2 crores, that is loss of 2 crores for them. Then, for this one, generally, if the people are those who are invested for this 10 rupees means if it is 1 or 2 crores, 2 crores means this 2 crores is belongs to this 10 crore number of shareholders. So which means each person will get 5 rupees. So 2 crores is the profits earned by them. 2 crore rupees of the profit they have received, and they have to be give it to the 10 crore numbers, means half paisa. Half paisa is the profit for the each shareholder. Or if we have changed this as this 1 or 2 crores only, each person will get half paisa as the profit. And here it is each person will get the half paisa as the loss. Then for this half paisa loss or the half paisa profit or all, owner will be the bearable person only for this one only. And also for the any losses are also, if they are all responsible for the ownership, then that shares will be called as the equity shares. Those who are limited responsibility only means if they are all responsible for 50% for the preference shares means these people will get the profit of 25 paisa or loss of only 25 paisa only based by this preference shares. The remaining 25 paisa will be based or takes by the equity shareholders and the debenture shareholders. The debenture shareholders means they are not at all responsible for any of the profits and the losses unless and until there is a supernatural profits. These debenture shareholders are responsible or liable for the interest rate only. Debt holders are also will expect this only the interest rate. They doesn't want any profits of the organization and the losses of irrespective of the profits and the losses. They are all expecting only the interest as the return from the organization. So that is called as the debenture shareholders. So that's way we can say that each capital can be divides into equal number of shares. So that equal number of shares, if they have divided, that subunit is called as the share value. This number of shares either is in the form of the equity shares, equity capital or debenture capital, or is in the form of long-term debts. So this equity or the preference share will be called as the equity capital, debenture and debt will be called as the debt capital. That's the combination of the capital structure. So we are all have the discussion about the what is the debt capital and what is the equity capital and all. So as equals to the owners, if they are ready to take their full ownership rights, then that is called as equity capital. They are ready to take this only the interest and not for that capital, and they are all called as the debt capital. So the capital structure is always depends on the size of the company. If the more the size of the company, then their investments will also be more, and the ability to take the liquidity, if they are able to get this liquidity cash, are they able to adjustable for this cash for the short run and all, it is better to go for this liquidity. Interest coverage, growth, tangibility, age of the firm, all these are all going to be the deciding factors of the capital structure. So that's why the types of the capital are based on the durability. So that is, if they are all spending for the purchasing of the trucks, land, buildings, machineries, etc., then that capital is called as a fixed capital. If they are all spending for this day-to-day activities, that is circulation capital, that is purchasing of the raw material, payments, transportation charges, etc. If they are all spending, then that is called as the circulating capital. If they are all spending for the investments which doesn't give any recurring returns, then it is called as a sunk capital. If they are all spending on the basis of floating or returning basis, then it is called as a floating capital. On the basis of the nature, real amount which they have invested is called as the real capital in the form of the money they have invested. In the form of the intelligence, if they have invested, then it is called as the intangible capital. If they in the form of the things or the machineries, if they have invested, then it is called as tangible capital. In the form of the labor, if they have invested, efforts, if they have invested, that is human capital. In the form of the land, if they have invested, then it is called as the real capital. Then on the basis of the ownership, there is an individual capital as well as the social capital. Then what for this capital is using means the procurement of the funds are based on the sources of the funds. This objectivity is to minimize the cost, and their objectivity or the capital functioning is utilization of the funds, that is application of the funds to maximize the returns. So that is two objectives are working for this capital, with an objectivity of procuring them to minimize the cost. In less cost they have to get the funds, and they have to invest where that gives the maximum returns. That is the main aim of this particular capital. Generally, the capital related decisions of the organizations will be taken care by the financial officer or the financial manager, and in any state or the country, the financial ministry will take care of this capital related functions. And the next thing is the short term sources and the long term sources. If we have seen, the short term sources of the funds are all like ownership funds, and the loans which are all taken will be called as the debt funds, but all are going to be repaying by the organization after 1 year only, then they are all called as the long term sources. If they are all repaying within 1 year, that is creditors have to be payable, or bills payables, account payables, etc. Short-term investments means which they can get the returns within 1 year, like purchasing of the stocks, debtors, cash, etc. And the long-term investments are the investments which they are all investing into this lands, buildings, acquiring of the lands, building, machineries, plant and machineries, etc. Then it is called as the long-term investments. Okay. What for this capital is required for the organizations means if they want to get maximum return, there is a requirement of maximum capital. And this capital should always be flexible for the organization's requirement. And if the organization are in a position to able to repay that loans or not, can be easily identified with this concept of the capital. And it increases the valuation of the firm and reduces the financial risk. And if that capital is able to minimize the cost, and that capital is addressing the tax planning tools, and it optimizing the utilization of the funds, then only that capital is more useful for the organization. Okay, so by considering all these important elements into the consideration, if they are planning about that particular capital, then it is called as capital budgeting. Planning of the capital is called as the capital budgeting. So this capital budgeting involves huge, generally if it is only 1 crore or the 2 crores in the point of the organizations, they will think very effectively. If it is only 1 lakh or 10,000 or 100 rupees, we need not to go for that much of planning. We will see just the returns basis. But they are all dealing with this shareholders' investments. That's why they require to plan effectively, because that capital budgeting is more focusing on the huge investments, expenditure control, investment decisions, and profit and wealth related maximization elements, risk and uncertainty estimations, and also based on the flexibility and the liquidity of the firm that business is going to be establishing, the this business is going to be getting the maximum returns. So that's why capital budgeting plays a significant role for the getting of maximum returns. So that's why the capital is refers to anything that can be used for the productive purposes by the firm or the individual, or it is an economic or financial capital entails monetary funds and the investments like equity, debt, or the real estates. And not only that one, even human capital and the social capital augments the purely economic rationale behind the capital, and together better explain how business and economic growth really works. That. Now the next category is about the types of the capital. The capital furtherly categorized based on the usage. It is the fixed capital, working capital, circulating capital, sunk capital, floating capital, money capital, real capital, private capital, social capital, national capital, and the international capital. So it is all about the examples I have fixed here. And this fixed capital sources means the retained earnings, that is already the organization has got the profits, and those profits again they are investing, then those are all the sources of the fixed capital. And the owners equity, owners amount which they have invested, term loans from the banks and the financial institutions, and in the form of the debentures which they have issued, the issue of the equity shares and the preference shares. In this way, they will get the fixed capital. And if they are spending, at the time of the spending, this fixed capital, they can spend it for the acquiring of the plant and machinery, patents, copyrights, goodwill, communication infrastructure, computing the infrastructure, companies' headquarters and the offices, factories, land and buildings, etc. If they have spent, then it is called as the fixed capital. Working capital. Again, this short-term capital will be they can acquire, or short-term loans which they are all getting from the organizations is called as this short-term capital or the working capital. They can spend for the property inventory, that is raw material purchasing and property modifications, maintenances, and the cash transactions they are all can spend, and they can pay for the wages, they can give as a rents, they can pay for the utilities and all. Then the remaining element is called as the working capital with them. And the circulating capital means to circulate from the raw materials to the status, or the for the entire inventory mechanisms, the spending is called as circulating capital. Sunk capital means capital goods which have only a specific used in producing a particular commodity is called as the sunk capital. Floating capital, so that is using for the day-to-day activities, can be alternative lines of the production, then it is called as the floating capital. Money or the financial or economical capital means the amount which are all necessary in order to get a business off the ground, and that comes from the debt and equity, then it is called as that one. Amount investing in the real estate, private capital, social capital, human capital, fixed capital. So like this, there are many elements around there. But in your particular textbook, or in this particular syllabus of this BEFA, there is a more focusing on the fixed capital and working capital, because this fixed capital plays an important role for the arrangement of the long-term elements to the organization, as well as for the arrangement of the as well as for the arrangement of the organizational goals, especially for the long run, that gives more beneficiary to the organization. And the working capital is also. So the working capital is more answerable for the liquidity management, account receivables management, inventory management, account payables management, and the short-term debt managements. Again, this working capital is categorized into two elements. On the basis of the concept, it is gross working capital and the net working capital. On the basis of the time period, it is permanent working capital and the temporary working capital. Again, the permanent working capital is divided into the regular working capital and the reserve working capital. Whereas on the basis of the temporary working capital, it is called as the seasonal working capital and the special working capital. Let us see. They have estimated that for the day-to-day, for the entire 1 year period, if the organization is estimating there is a requirement of 10 crores is planned. This 10 crores is called as gross working capital. And this, out of this 10 crores, they might have used 11 crores or the 9 crores. This is called as a gross working capital. Here, 8 crores permanently they have to pay for the salaries and the rents, etc. There is no chance of changing. Then it is called as the regular working capital. That comes under the permanent working capital. This 1 crore they are keeping as the reserves for the any uneventualities. Permanently they are maintaining some permanent working capital under the reserves. And temporarily, this 1 crore remaining temporarily due to the pandemic situation or the seasonal working capital or there is a more demand for the products, they have spent for this one. Then it is called as a seasonal working capital. And this temporary working capital is due to some accidents, due to the fire losses, etc. If it has done, then it is called as this special working capital. So why the organizations will go for this working capital means to strengthen the solvency position of the organizations, to make sure of the smooth business activities so that they regularly get the raw materials in time and easy to obtain the loans, to enhance the goodwill of the organization, and to in and all to improve the overall performance of the organizations. They are all more focusing on the working capital, because this working capital will give the net worth running beneficiary of the organization. So that's why the net working capital is going to be measuring by taking the total number of the current assets and the total current liabilities together, and the difference between these two current assets and the current liabilities is called as the working capital. This estimation of the working capital will be based on the sales method, means how many sales it is occurring, and based on that one will they can estimate, or based on the previous year statistics if they have done, then it is called as regression analysis, and based on their cyclical production methodology if they have estimated, then it is called as the operating working capital. And finally, if we see this differences between the fixed and the working capital, this fixed capital is using for the purchasing of the fixed long-term assets, or if they are using for the short-term assets, then it is called as a working capital. It says this almost all permanent capital is called as a fixed capital that keeps on changing as per the cyclics of the business, then it is called as a working capital. The purpose of the fixed capital is can acquire the land, buildings, furniture, equipments, etc. Whereas the working capital can be useful to purchase the raw material, payment of the utility bills, repairs and maintenances, etc. Then the sources of the fixed capital is the selling of the shares, debentures, bonds, long-term loans, etc. Whereas the sources of the working capital is about the short-term loans, public deposits, trade credits, etc. Objectives of these investors is to invest to make the future profits. Getting immediate returns is the objectivity of the working capital. Investing in the fixed capital implies more risk, but working capital will be the less risk because immediately they can see this results. Then our next concept is about the sources of the rising capital. Based on the usage, the capital of the organization is categorized into three: on the basis of the time period, on the basis of the ownership, on the basis of the sources of generation. On the basis of the time period, again, the capital is categorized into three: long-term capital, medium-term capital, so short-term capital. Long-term capital means the capital which is using or repaying by the organization after 1 year. That is minimum. It is there for 5 to 10, 50, 25, more than 5 years or only the long-term capital is acquiring by the organization. If it is after 1 year, within 5 years span, if they are able to pay, then it is called as medium-term capital. They are acquiring and they are paying within 1 year or one day. They may pay 1 week, within 1 month. But within 1 year, if they are able to repay that one, then it is called as the short-term capital. The long-term capital sources for the organization is they can issue the equity shares, the preference shares, debentures, or the long-term loans from the banks and the loans from the financial institutions, not only from the banks, other non-banking financial institutions like insurance companies, mutual funds, etc. If they are all getting, then it is all called as the long-term loans along with their retained earnings. If they are getting the medium-term loans and loan from the banks for the 1 to 5 years, or they have getting from the public deposits, loans from the financial institutions, leasing, hire purchasing, venture capitalist. From all these ones, people they are getting that one, then it is called as a medium-term loan. If they are getting for the any trade credits, trade discounts allowed, or the on the basis of the bills, on credit basis, if they are all purchasing, on the basis of factoring, banks, commercial papers, etc. If they are getting that loans, then it is called as the short-term capital. Ownership funds. Again, equity and the preference shares as well as the retained earnings will be called as the ownership capital. And the amount is in the form of the debentures, loan from the banks, loan from the financial institutions, public deposits, leasing, commercial papers will be called as the borrowed funds. If they are getting from this equity shares and the retained earnings and the preference shares, then it is called as internal sources. All other from the outsiders, if they get, then it is called as the external sources. Where we have already discussed what is the equity share capital at the beginning of this particular video. That is, equity share capital means a long-term financing source of a company. These shares are issued to the general public and are all non-redeemable in nature. Means whenever that equity shares are all buybacking by the company, then only they can sell their shares. Otherwise, they can replace, or that means they can resell to the other person. They can exchange with the other person, but they cannot sell back to the company. That shares are all called as all the shares are all same only. But these are all the shares have the advantages and the disadvantages too. That is, the dividend is more if the capital is gained by the organization. Though it is the more beneficiary exercises control to them, their responsibilities are also limited. There is a chance of getting bonus shares. There is a chance of getting stock splits. Liquidity is more. That is, advantages is there for the equity shares, but disadvantages is high risk. In the case of the losses are only, they are also required to take maximum number of losses. Then equals to this equity shares, the persons who takes the risk of the business as well as the financial risk of the organization, then that shareholders are all the preference shareholders, but they are all only limited for the some certain agreed portion of the share capital only. That is, preference shares are long-term sources of the finance of a company. They have elements of both equity shares and the debt. The debentures means those who are responsible for only taking of the debt, and they are all bearing they are all expecting the interest as a returns irrespective of the company profits and the losses, then they are all called as the debentures. Retained earnings means the profits which are redistributing for the business entities is called as retained earnings. And bills and bonds are all like promissory notes which are taking from the investors. If anyone wants to invest into the companies in a short run instead of in the form of the shares, they can invest in the form of bills and bonds. If any normal person or an institutional or individual person wants to invest into the government companies, they can purchase the treasury bills. So these treasury bills or the bonds or the short-term bonds raising by the government organizations on the basis of discount rate return approved by the RBI, then it is called as treasury bills. If any banks wants to get the short-term funds, they can issue this certificate of deposits. If any commercial bank, commercial organization which is get approved by the RBI, they can issue the commercial papers. So the next one is trading forecasting. Forecasting about the business entities and how much of growth is they are going to be get, how much of raw material is required, how much of finance is required. If they are all expecting all this expectations, then it is called as trade forecasting. For that one, to forecasting, they need to be planned accordingly. That planning is called as the capital budgeting. So this capital budgeting will be starts with identification of how much of funds has to raise and how much of consideration alternatives are all there, from where they can acquire, and what is the best suitable projects for that particular capital. If they are all identifying, that is the first step. And later on, they need to be allocate the fetched funds, that is carry out the financial analysis, and they have to be seek for the alternative investment plans. Once if they have invested, then the next third step is to they have to evaluate are they in a profitable position or not, and they have to go for the investment analysis. Our next concept is about the capital budgeting techniques. The techniques means before going to be investing into the business activities, because this capital budgeting is more important to help the undertaking risk estimation and to take the better decision makings and to take the all possible factors and the investment opportunities into the consideration. And also, though it has many limitations like irreversible in nature, that expectations might be give the benefit or not. That's why it is better to be more focusing on this profitable elements. So if they wants to invest into that any particular business, or if they are investing into this long-term investments, that they have to be more focusing on this techniques, that is traditional methods as well as time adjusted or discounted methods. These are all non-discounted methods. These are all the modern methods of that one. Assume that a person is going to be purchasing a land worth of 10 crore rupees, and after that one, he is expecting 1 lakh rupees as the return for every month. For each month, if he is going to be getting, if he has invested 10 lakh rupees, 1 lakh rupees per year, he is going to be get that one. Just simple calculations are only I am explaining you. A person is investing into the land for 10 lakhs, and each year he is going to be get the revenue as 1 lakh. Then obviously he will get back that investments within 10 years. So here we have not applied any time value of the money into this one. Then that is called as the payback period method. That means without having any time value of the money consideration, if they are taking the decisions, then that methods are all called as the traditional methods. If they take the time value of the money into the consideration, then that is called as the time adjusted or discounted methods. Once if we have seen, if we have to better understanding of this one, we must understand what is the meaning of the time value of the money. Here, the time value of the money means today's money is worthful than tomorrow's money. That means the amount which are getting today will be more beneficiary than the next future money. Let us say if the person has 1 lakh rupees, today if he has invested that one, tomorrow there is a chance of getting more returns. That is 1.03 lakhs there is a chance of getting. But today if he gets again, he has to wait for the next day. That means when compared to this day the money value is more. And today by spending of that 1 lakh, if he is going to be get 10 kilos of the any product, but the next day after 1 year or 6 months or only, the person is going to be get the same 10 kilos for this 1.03 lakhs, means this as value of the time of the, at this time the value of the money is more than this one. Generally, you might have seen that your parents or the any of the person was saying that if I would have taken that particular house on that particular date, that was very less. Now the rates of that particular houses are all increased, that product prices are all increased. These kind of things we are all going to be listening. That itself is called as the time value of the money. And that's way tomorrow's money can be estimated for the present time period, then it is called as the time value of the money. Let us see, this discussion is on the in future, that is after 1 year, if that person is going to be get 1,000 rupees as a return, they are estimating there is a 10% of the growth of discount of that money, then the present value of the money can be calculated with the help of 1 divided by 1 plus r to the power of n into cash flows. We can get this present value of the money. That means this is the future returns. Presently, that money value we can calculate. Or today, if they have invested 900 rupees, they are expecting 10% as a returns. In future, if they are getting how much of returns means into 1 plus r to the power of n value we have done. That is, R is called as the rate of return and N is called as the time period. Then within 1 year means 10% means 0.1, 10% within 1 year into 900 if we have calculated, then that value will be called as the future value of the money. Means future and the present values are equalizing with the help of this time factor. That is, for that one they are using the formula of 1 plus r to the power of n. That is the time value of the money. Time value of the money is considers in the calculation of the investment. For the calculation of the investments, then it is called as the net present value method, internal rate of methods, and the profitability index method. If they are not considering this time value of the money, then it is called as payback period method, post payback period method, and accounting rate of return. For example, 1,000 rupees they have invested. Every month they are expecting the 100 rupees as a return, then we can say that it will take 10 months time period to get back their investments. And their returning is for 1 year. 10 months is called as payback period. After payback period, 2 months the extra they are going to be get, that is called as post payback period. And at what rate they are going to be get back the investments means at 10% on an average they are going to be get back their returns, that is average rate of returns. This 1,000 rupees they are all getting after 1 year for the 1,000 rupees investments. Means this 1 year is the time value lapse that is then. That means after 1 year this 1,000 value might be become 900, means they are taking the time value of the money into the consideration. Then it is called as a net present value. If that reduction or the increasing rate at the rate at which rate they have to get back that investments back that they are calculating, then it is called as internal rate of return. And profitability index, the percentage of the cash inflows and the cash outflows and what rate they are going to be getting that discounted or time value of the money flows into the consideration is called as the profitability index. Our next concept is about the cash budget. Cash budget represents the, like it's a part of the working capital that more concentrates on the expected cash flows of an organization or a defined period. And also it includes expected cash receipts, cash payments, and restructuring of the cash balances at the end of that period. Then it is called as the cash budget. This decision is more important for the organizations, whether they have to be accept or reject into the organization, or if they want to be mutually exclusive project decisions, and if they want to be take the investing into the any new businesses, or if they want to acquire any new businesses, they require this capital budgeting decisions. And the factors affecting the capital budgeting is always depends on these elements, like the capital structure of the company, working capital requirement of the company, capital returns, availability of the funds, earnings, leading policies of the financial institutions, the managerial decisions, project needs, government policies, taxation policies, project's economic value, finding the right sources of the funds, selecting the profitability projects, capital expenditure controlling, objectives of the capital budgeting. All these are all will be changes the capital budgeting. If the company's equity capital is more, then obviously capital budgeting long term focus will be there. If they are taking the debt, there will be a working capital is more because they can't spend that debt amount on the fixed elements. So that's why the capital budgeting will be starts with the identification of potential investment opportunities where they have to invest. Do they go for the purchasing of the land or they can purchasing of the any machineries, how many machineries they wants to purchase, how many buildings they have to construct. That decisions will be taken at the first step. Based on that one, they will estimate the amount required for that one. Then they'll go for the alternatives of that one. Then they will estimate the cash flows, how much of cash is initially required, later how much required, and how much of returns they are expecting. They will discuss and they will implement and perform the review by investing into the business. So that's why the capital budgeting process, step 1 will be the proposals, identification, and step 2 is about the proposal evaluation, and the step 3 about the investment decision making, and step 4 is about the appointment of the project's appraisals, and step 5 is the implementation of the capital budgeting decisions, and step 6 is about the performance review. Because this capital budgeting gives a more time value or value of the money into the consideration. So that's why they will take the time value of the money into the consideration. The time value of the money's formula is future value of the money is equals to present value of the money into 1 plus r to the power of n, whereas the present value is equals to future value divided by 1 plus r to the power of n. If you want to this one, in any of this kind, we can use this formula. So the capital budgeting techniques, the first technique is the payback period. That is the time period that takes to get back their investments amount back is called as the payback period. It is very easy to calculate and easy solution, and it prefers the liquidity useful case of the uncertainties. So that's why they'll take this payback period into the consideration. And it ignores the time value of the money. Not all cash flows will be covers here. Not realistically, and it is not realistical and ignores the profitability and neglects the project's return on investment. These are all the limitations of the payback period. So the payback period formula is equals to initial investments made divided by net annual cash inflows. And the accounting rate of return means the methods looks at the total accounting returns for a project to see if it meets the target returns or not. That is the average rate of return that will be calculated with the help of the formula average annual profits after taxes divided by the average investments, whereas the average annual profits after taxes is equals to total of after tax profits for all the years divided by the number of years, and average investments is equals to original investment plus salvage value divided by 2. The next thing is this NPV value, net present value, whereas the cash flows of the both cash inflows and the cash outflows of the time value basis, if they have taken, then it is called as an NPV value. This NPV will be taken into the consideration, or that NPV 0 means that rate at which the organizations has to get, so that no loss, no gain point is called as internal rate of return. And the percentage of the cash inflows and the cash outflows will be taken with the help of the profitability index. So these are all the capital budgeting, capital, fixed capital, working capital, categorization. Thank you.
Like, share and subscribe. Hit the bell icon for more updates.